The Magic are back at the crib. Make sure my mic is on. The Magic are back at the crib, ready to be out of Cleveland. I'm back home too. It's time to take stock of what we've seen so far, what can be fixed, what is a real problem, and where the Magic go from here. We're going to do it live today, whether you're listening on X Spaces or watching live on YouTube or listening to a replay. We love you too. It's time for Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is April 23rd. It will be April 24th, 2024 at some point in the evening. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the expert and site editor over at OrlandoMagicTaylor.com. You can, of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. We are doing this episode live, so if you have questions, drop them in the YouTube comments. I'll be able to see them there. If you're on the X Spaces at OMagic Daily, go ahead and make speaker requests. I'm going to take your questions here for the next 30 to 45 minutes. We'll see how long this goes. And just kind of take stock of where the Magic are at this stage of the series. Obviously down 2-0, coming back to the Kia Center where the Magic are a significantly better team. We'll find out just how much better when we get to Thursday's games. We have an off day. We had a travel day today. I made my way back home from Cleveland. Magic traveled last night. They've been home all day. We'll get to all that coming up here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's great Locked On podcasts like our friends at Locked On Cavs. For every single team in the NBA, just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for, the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Okay. I remember sitting after game one. And after game one, I sat down and talked to a few of the other Magic reporters. And, generally the vibe after game one was a sense of confidence that, look, we didn't play great, but we still found ourselves in the game. Maybe took us a little while to get acclimated to the playoffs. The Cavs experience got us in the beginning. And really it just came down to the Magic had to make shots. And if they did that, they'd be fine. And I think we could sit here and still generally say that's true. I remember just kind of in the day between game one and game two, just kind of sitting there thinking, the thing that I can't figure out is which part of this series is permanent. What I'm defining as the mean of the series. And for those who don't remember high school math, mean is just average. What is level? Water always finds its level. What is level? What is the baseline for this series? How is this series going to work on that just very basic level? And I think that's the question I had was, is this Magic shooting this poorly permanent? Can they slow down Cleveland's offense the way that they were slowing down Cleveland's offense? What is going to change in game two that could change the result, or kind of what's the outlier from game one is I think what we're really looking for. Like what part of game one is the weird thing that happened? And perhaps it was Evan Mobley's big game. Perhaps it was keeping Darius Garland in check. Perhaps it was the Magic shooting. We didn't know after game one. Game two gives us that second data point. It tells us, okay, this is how this series has gone so far. This is now we have something consistent. And I think I made this comparison on yesterday's episode of Locked On Magic. Game two didn't just rhyme with game one. Game two sung in complete harmony with game one. All the things the Magic struggled with in game one, they struggled with again in game two. They got off to a bad start, put themselves in the hole, and yeah, maybe Jalen Suggs' injury had a little bit to do with that. Maybe the Magic were playing a lot more focused and a lot better, despite their poor shooting. But regardless, they found themselves in a hole again. The Magic again missed their first 7 3-pointers and were just unable to get an open outside shot to go down. I've got the shooting numbers. It's on my rundown. We'll talk about the shooting problems coming up here in a minute. Perhaps that was something that carried over. What also carried over, Donovan Mitchell being able to get downhill and create movement, create rotations, force the Magic to make decisions. That repeated itself, and it took the Magic a while to find themselves once again. But what also repeated was, yes, once the Magic found their defense, they shut down Cleveland again. They were able to kind of hold the Cavs in check. And, as Jamal Mosley put it after the game, it doesn't matter if we play even with them, if we spot them 12 points at the start, but for 3 quarters, essentially the Magic played even. So the Magic are far, and Cleveland's been far and away the better team. I'm not going to sit here and pretend otherwise. The Magic are far, but they're not that far. Jared Allen has kind of been the big difference. Him just dominating the glass, and especially getting 9 offensive rebounds in Monday's game. That was a huge differentiator. And so we're sitting here now with 2 games under our belt. We're sitting here with 2 games done in this series, trying to figure out, okay, is this level? Is this what this series is going to be? And the Magic ultimately have to be the ones that say, no, it isn't. We've got to change some things. We've got to hit shots. And then, Cleveland, I've been listening to Cleveland Sound. I've been listening to what the Cavs have had to say after these games. Their repeated messages, okay, we did this once. Now we got to do it again and again and again and again. The Magic have cost themselves 2 mistakes. They only got 2 mistakes left. You got 2 strikes left. The Magic have to figure out how to do it again the first time. They have to figure out how to do it the first time rather than do it again like Cleveland's trying to figure out. Cleveland has the formula. And if anything else, that's been the big takeaway in this series so far. Cleveland's been waiting for this playoffs, and they've got an opponent in the Magic that probably fits their eye really well. As much as Magic fans wanted the Cavs for whatever struggles they perceive Cleveland to have, Cleveland kind of matches up really well with Orlando. And unless and until Orlando hits enough shots to keep Cleveland honest, this is how the series is going to go. And look, Orlando wants it ugly too. Orlando wants the scores under 100. Cleveland's comfortable playing under 100. Orlando's comfortable playing under 100. The issue is the Magic now have to figure out how to score. And that to me is where we expected this to be a problem. No doubt about it. I don't think any of us expected the Magic to be non-competitive as they've been. And their first quarters have been terrible. They've given up 30 points in the first quarter of both games. Only 30-point quarters of these games for either teams. The Magic just have not been able to sustain enough offense to take advantage of the defense that they have. And that's the struggle right now. If Orlando can figure out a way to crack this defense, get past the wall that they're setting up on Paolo Banchero, make some open shots, for crying out loud, that's when this series is going to begin to turn. But as things stand, Cleveland's dictated every term of this series. Cleveland's the one that came out punching first and establishing control so they can make mistakes. The thing about having a lead means you can make mistakes. Orlando has played a game where they've had to be perfect. And that means every turnover hurts, every missed free throw hurts, every offensive rebound hurts, every 3 you give up hurts, because you have to be perfect. And this is, something I said a lot when the Magic were not a good team, and the Magic are a good team now. Do not let this playoffs tell you this team is not a good team. It's a bad matchup, and this is a flawed team. We're not going to sit here and say otherwise. This team won 47 wins. They won every single one of those games, including 2 against Cleveland. But the Magic haven't been able to figure out the code. They haven't been able to get past the gate in this series. And that's going to be the struggle for the rest of the series. I mean, I think I said this before the series began. This series would turn on whether the Magic could hit shots or not. And clearly they haven't. So now the Magic have to find themselves and find their level coming up here. We're going to take your comments, take your questions as we break down this series at this. It's hopefully not the midpoint of the series, but with the Magic coming home, we'll break down what to expect from the Magic as they get back to the Kia Center. I see a couple comments on YouTube. If you have a speaker request or question on the X Spaces, go ahead and make a speaker request. We'll get you on the show as well. But we're going to get to the Magic shooting woes coming up here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a quick word from our friends over at DoorDash. Look, do you want to make your mom smile? Start Mother's Day with flowers or surprise her with gifts from the brands she loves, delivered the very same day with DoorDash. Mother's Day is on the horizon. Make sure you mark it on your calendars. I'm going to do that right after I'm done reading this ad or done with this podcast, because we want to make our moms the happiest in the world. I had to miss Passover, and my mom was not happy about it, but she understood, so I got to make it up to her. Whether mom has a sweet tooth, whether she's a tech enthusiast, whether she wants beauty products, whether she just wants flowers, DoorDash has the ability to give your mom exactly what she wants this Mother's Day. Get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place and get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend 15 or more on your next flour, convenience, grocery, or retail order, now with code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA. Order using DoorDash today. Terms do apply. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at Monopoly Go. Look, we all have a little bit of a competitive side. We all love to play games, and Monopoly's always been one of my favorite board games to play, whether it's with family, whether it's with friends, whether it's just online. Monopoly works with everything. It's just a fun game to play. So whether you're a fan, whether you're a player, whether you're competitive, whether you're not competitive, Monopoly Go lets you scratch all those instincts and more. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone anytime, with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. You can play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards, make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with wrecking balls, or charge other players rent for your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends if you like being nice to crack open community chests and get into tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. We want to thank you for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. For your next listen, be sure to check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel. Gets you all the daily sports news, the best sports news from around the sports world, from local experts like me who know their team best. You're not just you're not just listening to talking heads screaming at each other. Nobody wants that. Trust me. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Like I said, we are doing this episode live, so I want to get your questions, your thoughts on the series so far. So feel free to make a speaker request here if you're listening on X Spaces, or drop a comment here on the YouTube page as well. I want to hear what you guys have to think about this series, what questions you have about how the Magic get back into this series. So I want to know what you think. Let's get a comment here on YouTube from Sajan Bird. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name there. Do you think Paolo needs a secondary guard ball handler other than what's on the roster right now? The answer to that is yes. 100% yes. Look, Paolo has 15 turnovers here in 2 games. And a big reason for that is he is on the ball every possession. He does not get a break. He does not get to set up in the post. He does not get to pick a matchup. He is on the ball having to make decisions. And look, ultimately, I think this is going to be good for him. Ultimately, I think what the Magic's kind of theory of team building is they want 5 guys who can make decisions. They don't want a quote-unquote point guard. They want 5 guys who can make plays off the dribble and make decisions. The problem right now is Paolo's the only one that can do that. Franz kind of does it, but he's not a great decision maker. He's not a great passer. Jalen Suggs isn't a passer. Markelle Fultz was your playmaker, but obviously he doesn't space the floor. He's not starting right now, so he's not there, and they're not running him like a point guard anymore. Anthony Black has not been running as a point guard all year. And so, yes, when I look at this Magic team and I look at how they're struggling in this playoff series, one of the main reasons they're struggling to crack this Cleveland defense is because they're literally having to do the same thing over and over and over again. The Magic essentially have one way to beat Cleveland, And that is to try and get Paolo going downhill or get Franz going downhill and put pressure on the rim. And that's fine. It's a great strategy. It worked in the it worked well enough in the regular season. It didn't work in the regular season. Magic were 22nd in the league in offensive rating. It only works really well if you have the shooters. This kind of it's not quite James Harden-esque, but the James Harden offense worked because he could get downhill and find shooters on the perimeter. You couldn't help off of him, so he could just get to the basket. What Paolo Banchero is seeing every time he gets downhill, every time he comes around the screen, every time he gets to the free throw line, is he sees three bodies in front of him. And look, I think Paolo is making generally good decisions, early in games especially. He's spraying it out to Jonathan Isaac for three. Jonathan Isaac was 1 for 7 on threes. Wendell Carter was 1 for 6 on threes. For the way the Magic are trying to play and for the game plan that they have against this Cavs team, those guys need to make shots. And maybe it's a small sample because Jonathan Isaac was a 37.5% three-point shooter this year. Wendell Carter was 38% from three. They're missing shots. It sucks, but they're missing shots. And I think when Paolo gets into trouble, where he got into trouble, I think a lot on Monday's game, is he's trying to force passes into tight holes because he doesn't trust the shooting anymore. And so, look, we all know the Magic needs shooting, but I think the Magic do need to find a secondary ball handler just so they have a different way to attack. Put Paolo as the screener in pick and rolls. When was the last time we saw Paolo as a screener in a pick and roll with a guard? They don't do that anymore. They don't do that at all, in fact, really, because Paolo is always on the ball. How do we get Paolo Banchero shots in the spots that he likes? Well, without a true point guard, without someone who can set him up on the block, set him up on the post, and maybe this isn't the series to post him up because Evan Mobley is not a guy you post up. But the Magic can't bring two to the ball in an advantageous position, in a position that compromises the defense. When you're setting up at the top of the key, you've already used your dribble, and they're able to wall you up, you're not compromised. You could still rotate out fast enough to shooters. And so the Magic don't have a way to move Paolo around right now to get to his spots, to get to spots where he's comfortable scoring. And as much, the Magic needs shooting, not denying that, not saying that, but this is the big thing the Magic are missing. The Magic could still win without great shooting if they had a second way to attack. If they had a way to just get the ball to Paolo or Franz, for that matter, in a spot or in a way that compromises the defense. Their inverted pick and rolls with Cole Anthony or Jalen Suggs setting the screen, they're not working. The Cavs are blowing that up. Evan Mobley's getting around the screen in time so they don't switch them. They don't get the matchup they want. This is the problem for the Magic. They can't get Cleveland to change their defense. And so, yeah, I would say Paolo and the Magic, I liked what Brandon Kravitz said on In the Zone on Facebook. He said, he said essentially all anyone could wait for was getting into the playoffs. And now that we're here, all anyone's talking about is the offseason. So I agree with that. We still got a series here. We're not done yet. The Magic have to win obviously on Thursday, but we're not done yet. Having said that, yes, this playoffs was very much about, okay, let's figure out what the Magic actually need. And I think the hope that Jalen Suggs could develop into a point guard didn't pan out. I think the hope that Markelle Fultz would work obviously didn't pan out. And so now the Magic have been stuck playing Paolo as the point guard, and they have no other way to get downhill, no other way to force the defense to change, no other way to get Paolo an open three-pointer, to be perfectly honest. Get him open shots so that he doesn't have to work this hard to get good looks. That is, I think, the big challenge, and it's one of the things we've learned from this series. So that was a long-winded answer, so I appreciate the question there, Sejan. I'm going to get to N8 here on YouTube in a sec, but Luis Alborz Malia asks, any info about Suggs' condition for Thursday's game? We don't have direct answers about Suggs' condition for Thursday's game quite yet. The Magic traveled home after the game last night. They said he was going to get some testing done today. They were off today. The Magic did not practice on Tuesday for the travel day. So we will hear from them Wednesday afternoon. Magic will issue an injury report. I will bet that he will be listed as questionable, but I would also bet that he will play. And so we'll get more word on Jalen Suggs tomorrow, and we'll have an update. Follow me on Twitter at @OMagicDaily for the latest on that. Let's get one more question before the next ad break. N8 asks, what are your thoughts on the rotation? Seems like we're playing too many bench lineups. 100%. The Magic have kind of kept their rotation generally like it's a regular season game, which I do not like. It's the playoffs. One of Paolo or Franz needs to be on the floor at all times. If Markelle Fultz is not defending, which he was not defending very well on Monday in game 2, Markelle Fultz cannot play. Plain and simple. That's his, at this point, because Markelle Fultz is a non-factor offensively, his only value to the team is his defense. And so if he's not defending effectively, and he's always been an okay defender, but not a great defender, but if he's not defending effectively, he has no value. At this point, you got to shrink your rotation. You got to be going, 9 is probably pushing it a little too hard. Paolo, at this point, Paolo or Franz, one of them needs to be on the floor at all times. And really, they're only sitting to get quick breathers. Like if something happens, you bring one of them back in. And especially if you're trailing. If you're leading, maybe you can milk some extra rest and milk some minutes. But the Magic haven't led a single minute in this series. So the rotation has not been good. I personally, I understand and I get the logic of the decision to move Jonathan Isaac into the starting lineup. They essentially decided, at least from what I gather, they essentially decided that they're going to go 5 out and try and draw Jared Allen away from the basket by putting Jonathan Isaac in that corner and, making them pay for that. They obviously haven't made them pay. Isaac was 1 for 7 from 3 in Monday's game. That is not going to get the job done. Jonathan Isaac could come back. It could come back on Thursday, make 3 of 5 threes, and that'll completely change the game. Just like Evan Mobley hitting those 2 threes in game 1 completely changed the game early on. So I do think we're seeing too many of the bench minutes. I've often called this team sort of a house of cards where everyone, when everyone's healthy and doing their roles, they fit perfectly. Like I said, I hate the lineup change. It's not so much for Jonathan Isaac starting. It's more bringing Wendell Carter off the bench and taking Jonathan Isaac out of that bench group. I think that you lose a lot of the energy and a lot of the defensive cohesion of that second unit by taking Isaac off of it. Wendell Carter doesn't cover for Mo Wagner the way that Jonathan Isaac does. And look, Mo Wagner's had a great series. I think he's actually played some pretty good defense. But Magic need more. And honestly, I don't get disrupting what has worked. And I get the first quarter stuff's been a problem for a while now. I don't get disrupting what's worked. The Magic have disrupted what's worked. And that to me is a major problem. So yeah, I think that the Magic have good game plan principles. I think that they have struggled to execute them. And I think Jamal Mosley has struggled to kind of steady the ship. I think he overthought things with the coaching, with the lineup change, to be perfectly honest. And look, JB Bickerstaff's coaching circles around him. Like, the Cavs had a clear sense of who they are as a team. The Magic, offensively at least, don't. And that to me is on Jamal Mosley. We'll talk more about some lineup changes. I'll get to the 3-point shooting numbers. I want to make sure I share those before we close the show. We're going to get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a quick word from our friends over at FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Okay, I promised it on the promo for this episode. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest. I hope this space allows you to get something off your chest, Magic fans. So please chime in, come in the show. That's what this space is for. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you, and it's important to let that out, especially to someone who is unbiased in your life. So obviously, we're all kind of commiserating. We're all wringing our hands, getting ready for Game 3 this is your opportunity to get something off your chest. This space, this show is your chance to do that about the Magic. I'm not going to solve your personal problems. I'm not Ryan Russillo. Therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports team, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Okay, let's get back to some of your comments. I'm going to get to some more comments here on YouTube in just a second. So I do see all your questions. I want to make sure I get to them. But let's hear from someone on the X Spaces. It's going to be Ace chiming in here. Let's add him as a speaker. Let's wait for him to get connected here. And let's hear from Ace here in 3, 2, 1.5, 2. Ace, how's it going, my man? You're on mute as well.
Hey, do you hear me?
Yes, I hear you. How you doing, Ace?
Okay, I don't know why you're breaking up a little.
Oh, I saw. That's a phone. That's a me problem. That's not a you problem. I hear you loud and clear.
Okay, sounds good. All right, man. So I'm not even a Magic fan. I'm from Minnesota. I'm a big Jalen Suggs fan. So I've been following the Magic because of y'all.
Yep.
And I have some real concerns about this team. I've been watching you guys pretty much all season, especially the second half of the season when you guys started to get hot. I think your defense this series hasn't even been that bad. Like I would put 95% of the blame on your offense because I think it's really hurting your defense. Like Mitchell is gonna get his numbers, we know that, but I think you guys have been doing a decent job at slowing down everybody else, other than maybe Mobley in game one. But I really think your head coach is Mosley or whatever his name is. He has to make a guard change, I think. I think you just cannot keep playing these two guards together. I really put the blame on these guards. I think Banchero and Wagner have been decent. I'm just not seeing enough guard play. What do you think? Do you think like a lineup change is in need here, especially at guard?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's tough. It's really tough with this roster because and I want to this could probably get into the next question I'm going to answer here, but look, we knew entering this postseason the offense was really bad, or not really bad's far, but we knew the offense was going to struggle. The Magic had the 22nd ranked offensive rating in the league. They were I think they finished 25th in 3-point field goal percentage, but we're talking bottom of the barrel. We knew entering the series that 3-point shooting was going to be kind of the determining factor for this team. And the Magic are, offensively not a team that's driven by their guards. It's very different than a lot of teams. They use Paolo and Franz as their main ball handlers. I think they wanted to see if Jalen Suggs could take on more point guard responsibilities, but he really isn't a point guard, as I'm sure you know. Obviously, like in high school and college, he probably could get away with it a little bit more. At this level, a little too, at least before this season, a little too wild and out of control to play point guard at the highest of levels. But the Magic just don't have any other options. Like Gary Harris is a 3-point shooter that teams respect, that defenses respect, and he shot 3 for 5 in game 2 after the 0 for 5 showing in game 1. Gary Harris is a reliable 3-point shooter, and that he's their quote unquote 3-point special. So he had a bad game 1, came back with a great game 2. He's someone they trust, and someone that they trust to defend well. And I think he's done an okay job on Donovan Mitchell. He did better in game 1 than he did in game 2, at least. Jalen Suggs is a core guy. And, I'll agree with you on this. Like, the Magic do need more from their guards. And frankly, like, I hate saying this because, Jalen was hurt, and clearly gutting through a really painful injury on Monday night. They need Jalen Suggs to make threes. That's always been the question with Jalen Suggs. But Suggs is the heart and soul of the defense. And so you can't really take him out of the lineup. And so a lot, as we begin looking ahead to free agency and what the Magic do in the offseason to solidify this offense, a lot of us are saying, well, the Magic got to go find either a true point guard or they got to find a knockdown, or more specifically, got to find a knockdown shooter who can maybe handle the ball a little bit to take Gary Harris's place, because Gary Harris is a free agent this summer. I don't think it's impossible the Magic re-sign Gary Harris, but bring him off the bench. I think The problem was the Magic have to start him. But, I'm a big believer that you got to go with what got you here. The Magic earned the 5 seed. They won 47 games. So they can't deviate too much from what got them here. And so that's why I'm very critical of the decision to start Jonathan Isaac over Wendell Carter. Yes, Jonathan Isaac had a great game when Wendell Carter was hurt and trying to gut through the back injury on the last day of the season. But I was always, people always ask me, Jonathan Isaac should start at center. I'm just like, no, I don't think he can hold up against the bigger centers. And Isaac is getting pounded on the glass by Jared Allen. He hasn't been able to make the defensive impact that the Magic needs. So if there is a lineup change that I would make, I would just go back to what works and go with Wendell Carter. The problem with the guard situation is, as people are pointing out here in the comments on YouTube, Cole Anthony hasn't scored. Cole Anthony hasn't made a shot this whole series. And that's a huge problem. So your backup guards are Markelle Fultz and Cole Anthony. Markelle Fultz is a non-shooter. He ain't going to help your offense. Just plain and simple, he's not going to help your offense in the series unless you put the ball in his hands and let him operate, but the Magic aren't doing that. Cole Anthony is your supposed scorer and your kind of spark plug scorer. He's done a good job, I think, getting to spots and trying to get to that mid-range shot that he really likes, but you're kind of seeing why he was the 16th pick in the draft and not a top 10 pick like he hoped to be, because teams have been able to kind of corral him and challenge those shots, and those shots either go in or out, and they're going out right now. Your other guard options are Anthony Black, who, I'll put this comment up from Javier Gandia up. He says, do you think AB would be useful to stop Cleveland's pick and roll offense when Suggs is on the bench? Seems like we could kill with Garland Mitchell and the 2 rim running bigs. Anthony Black is an option, and I would, if I were making a rotation change too, I might play Anthony Black over Markelle Fultz, just because Anthony Black is a more willing shooter, but nobody's afraid of his shooting. And ultimately, I think that's the problem is, the Magic's biggest issue in this series has been Cleveland wants them to shoot threes, and that's fine. The Magic are getting open threes. I want to make sure I want to share these numbers before we leave today. In Monday's game, the Magic went 9 for 35 from three. They were 3 for 13 when the closest defender was 4 to 6 feet away, according to NBA.com, and 6 for 21 when the closest defender was 6+ feet away. That means 21 of their 35 threes were wide open. No one in the vicinity. They were 9 for 34 on open threes. Even at the Magic's poor percentage, if they're just shooting 37% on these shots or 36%, that's 2 or 3 more threes. And in a 10-point game, that matters. And so you hate to reduce it down to just something so simple, but Cleveland's not going to change and not going to open up holes for this Orlando offense to operate until Orlando beats the first thing Cleveland's giving up. And Cleveland is giving up threes. And the Magic have to make threes to compete. I saw you kind of post a tweet about starting Jonathan Isaac and Wendell Carter together, moving Franz Wagner to the 2. I don't hate that idea. I don't like the idea of Franz Wagner having to guard Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland. I think the Magic have done a good job locking out Darius Garland with the job that Jalen Suggs has done on him. And I think Gary Harris has largely made Mitchell work, but Mitchell Mitchell torched him a little bit in game 2, and I think the Magic are going to have to consider putting Suggs on Mitchell a whole lot more. It's tough. It's really tough. And so the Magic right now, like, Cleveland is beating the first thing the Magic try on them in games 1 and game 2. Orlando still hasn't beaten the thing that Cleveland's trying first, and that's that. They haven't made Cleveland adjust. And I like, you're right. The Magic do have to make a lineup change. They just don't have it on the roster to make the change that they need.
I guess one thing I want to say, you said earlier, like you would want to stick with what you got you here. I think in the postseason, I think you have to be willing to change in the postseason. You have to be willing to adapt within the series.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. but I mean, and I think this is Jamal Mosley's fault to some extent too. And I don't think he properly prepared for the playoffs. He's stuck with this same rotation now for a better part of 2 months. So we haven't seen Anthony Black play meaningful minutes hardly ever. The last time we probably saw Anthony Black play meaningful minutes was against the Knicks, and he did not look good. We haven't seen Goga Bitadze play meaningful minutes. He got thrown into the fire against the Sixers and really struggled at the start. And you're right. Like, at this juncture, the Magic should be thinking, okay, if we have problems at center, let's start Goga Bitadze. Let's start a rugged center who can set hard screens and do that. But I also think, like, you can't completely panic. Like, you got to be willing to try things, but you can't show panic. You can't show your team that I don't trust the game plan that I came up with because then they don't trust the game plan you come up with. But you're right too on that point. Like, the Magic got to find something that works, and they got to find it fast. And maybe they're not, like I said, I don't think they're necessarily that far away, but they're far right now. Like, they got to find a way to get one before they get two, and they got to find a way to get one, and it doesn't seem very easy.
Yeah, okay. No, that makes all the sense. And, like, one last thing I'll say is, like, the Magic can take inspiration from Cleveland. Cleveland last season was their first postseason since LeBron left, and they struggled, and they got swept by.
They lost by 5. They lost in 5. They lost in 5.
They lost in 5. Yeah, so like playoff experience, like we saw OKC struggle, and they're the top seed in the West the other night. So I know I like what the Magic are building, especially I know it's been a long time. You guys are similar to the Timberwolves, where
it's been a while.
2010s.
It's been a while.
It's not a good decade for us. Yeah. So,
yeah.
Hey, man, I got to head out, but I appreciate the space. I like your guys' channel. Hopefully the Magic can turn it around.
Appreciate it, Ace. Glad to have a fan up in Minneapolis. I always rep Minneapolis. I worked for the Wolves for a summer, so I'm always a big fan. And they're our sister team anyway. So I appreciate Ace. Let's get back to some of your comments here. I'm going to stay on for another 10, 15 minutes or so here. Tino Valerio comments on YouTube. Overall, Weltham has been immaculate, pivoting via draft. Should fans be concerned with their inability to customize a roster that sets up our stars for success? Tino, this is what I've always kind of meant when I say, like, this year is not about this year. I think that the Magic, ever since Jeff Weltman has taken over, or at least since the Nikola Vucevic trade, I think that the Magic have always been kind of in a rebuilding mode and a rebuilding phase. Like, I hear a lot of fans who are frustrated that Anthony Black and Jet Howard aren't playing, and I get that. And like I said, I think Anthony Black is worth trying at this point. Like, sprinkle him in instead of those Markelle Fultz minutes, just see if it works. But I think the Magic drafted Anthony Black because he was still the best player on the board, a player who kind of fit their idea and their culture, and someone that they felt, that they could build and grow up. They knew both Anthony Black and Jet Howard were long-term projects. They drafted those guys because they were the best player available, not because they necessarily were like the best fits for this season. They were long-term projects. Well, I think the Magic expected to be a play-in team. If you gave Jeff Weltman truth serum, and like I think he even said it openly. Like, we knew we would get to this point eventually. We didn't think we'd get to this point this year. I think if he gave Jeff Weltman truth serum, he probably said, like, if we made the play-in this year, that would be amazing. Like, if we were a 500 team, that would be amazing. To be flirting in the last week of the season with home court advantage, with 50 wins, like, that's an incredible season. But doing that also brings you pressure. Now you're expected to do this every year. And so I don't think fans should be concerned just because of Weltman's drafting history. And like, look, generally, I believe that you draft best player available and you figure it out later. Like, talent will always win. You figure, if you have talent, you'll be fine. But now the winning window is open. Now you're going to have to pay Franz Wagner and Jalen Suggs. So this is your last summer to kind of have free money to spend. Now you got to start building the contours of the team that's going to compete for the second round of the playoffs, for the conference finals, eventually for the finals. And so I think the summer the Magic are about to have, and this is regardless of what happens the rest of the series. Like, this series is informing and telling us what the team needs, but regardless of regardless of how this series ends, the Magic are now going to be building a team. If you don't make Paolo's life easier, if you don't make Franz's life easier, we may like you may be a favorite teammate, but you're gone. Like, Markelle Fultz isn't getting a second chance. Like, I love Markelle to death. I want him to succeed. I really want him to succeed. He's a great dude. He does not help this team win. And that's why he's going to walk. That's why he's not going to be in the team next year. I love Wendell Carter. Wendell is a great guy. Good locker room presence. I think he's a good player. I think he's had a bad season. If he doesn't help you win in the playoffs, which the series has really been an indictment on, I don't know if it's been an indictment on Wendell Carter, but it certainly doesn't look good. Then you got to move on. You got to find guys that help you win. So I think we're in store, and we'll talk plenty more about this after the series ends, but I think we're in store for a very, very different summer than we've had here in a long time. And I think that's the truth. Gabe Maldonado on YouTube comments, it's been the lack of energy to start games. The team really struggles after a couple days off. It will be the same Thursday. Look, this team's not been good in the first quarter all year. Magic are 22nd in the league, I think, in net rating in the first quarter. Even their great starting lineup, they got like a plus, I think it's plus 12 overall net rating, but it's plus 4 in the first quarter. And that's the regular starting lineup, not the one with Jonathan Isaac, which hasn't played very many first quarters. In a series where the Magic, and I want to make sure I get this number right, so so you're like, you can give me your shock face. In a series where the Magic are giving up a 101 defensive rating, and a 101 defensive rating is really good. It's 6th in the playoffs, actually, so far. In a series where the Magic are giving up a 101.0 defensive rating, 101 points per 100 possessions, the Magic are giving up 120 points per 100 possessions in the first quarter. They've given up 30 points in each of the two first quarters. They've been down. And when you're playing this Cavs defense, which is really good, obviously, you can't be playing from behind. You got to be at least even. And Jamal Mosley said it after the game last night. You can play even with them all you want, but you can't spot them 12 points. So, I would say I agree with you. I think the Magic will be fine coming to the Kia Center. The two game, they've lost 13 of the last 15 first quarters. I think they'll be fine. I think they'll have energy coming to the Kia Center. I think the crowd's going to help them. I do think they'll play. I think they are going to play better on Thursday. Thursday will be a game. Whether the Magic win it or lose it, though, is going to determine what the rest of the series is, obviously. The Magic have to hold serve. Every player, every coach said it. Cleveland did their job. They won their games on their home floor. Now they got to come to our place. The Magic are really confident in their place. They believe they can win. Remember how poorly they played on the road, Houston, Milwaukee, Philadelphia. They came back home to Milwaukee. They struggled at the start of that game too, but put the screws on that team. The energy is going to be unreal. I am expecting a much more energetic effort, to your point. And honestly, I'm expecting a much more energetic start. Just because I think the crowd's going to be in a frenzy, and the crowd's going to do their job to help this team. It's just, again, whether the Magic execute, get shots to go down. Another question here about Gary Harris. Biggest problem is not getting anything from your shooting guards. Gary Harris has been a liability on offense all season. His defense was suspect in game 2. I agree his defense was not particularly strong in game 2. Look, every team has a fifth starter. The Magic are not a guard-oriented team. A lot of teams are guard-oriented teams, and this is the area I think the Magic need to upgrade. They probably need to find a more defensive-minded, rim-protecting center, a harder screen setter than they're getting, certainly from Jonathan Isaac. Wendell Carter, I think, is a great screener. And again, another reason why I don't get why they're not starting Wendell Carter. Just simply using him as a screener helps Franz Wagner, helps Paolo Banchero. It's going to get guys going downhill a little bit more. He can hard roll to the paint, but the Magic probably need a bit more of an above-the-rim presence on defense, a harder roller. Carter spaces the floor a little bit, but not enough, obviously. They're not a guard-oriented team. Every team has a fifth starter. And Gary Harris has had a down shooting season compared to last year, but he's been about his average, and he's a reliable three-point shooter. Because the Magic don't have a lot of shooting, his misses feel big because he's the guy you need to make every shot. He made his shots in game 2. If he repeats that in game 3, I think the Magic win. So I've always been a Gary Harris fan. Injuries are the bigger concern with him, but I've always been a Gary Harris fan. I think the mistake is that he's not a starter in the league anymore. If he were coming off the bench, I think no one would be batting an eye at him. And, maybe that's the problem. Rafa Casanova asks, I don't know if you covered it, but why not stagger Paolo and Franz? We need to cut the rotations. I agree completely with that. Any lineup that does not have one of Paolo or Franz at this point is a bad lineup. That's just the truth. There's no reason for any of them to be, there's no reason for either of them to be off the floor. Rafa comes back. I'm going to get to here. Why do people on X think Franz is struggling other than shooting? Isn't he having a career? He is having a career other than shooting. He's finishing he's getting more shots at the rim. He's finishing at about the same percentage on higher volume at the rim. He's getting to the foul line more. He's getting more assists. He's really expanded his game in really great ways. And yeah, like adding a mid-range game would help, like he showed a little bit in game 2. But look, everybody is struggling in this series. Here's your stat line for Franz Wagner in the series: 18 points per game. That's second on the team. 37, and he's 6 for 16, 37.5% shooting. Hold on, that's not correct. 12 for 32. I'm sorry, 12 for 32. Let me get totals here. 12 for 32 on shots, 4 for 10 from 3. Franz is actually making his threes. But 8 for 11 from the line, 14 rebounds, 5 assists. He has 6 turnovers. All of them were in Tuesday's game. It's hard. Like, Franz needs to make shots. That's part of what he does. He's really struggled to get downhill. And look, they put Evan Mobley. They have really mobile bigs. He has struggled to kind of squeeze his way into the lane like he normally does. And so that is part of the problem with Franz. And I think everyone right now watching this Magic team is just frustrated because, like Matt Browning says in this comment here, it really is simple: make shots. Everyone said this after the game. The Magic have to make shots. Nothing matters. They can't get Cleveland to change their defense to adjust until they make shots. And, this is the gamble Cleveland's making. Cleveland is telling Orlando, before you get to the paint, before you get to your bread and butter, before you get to the thing that you are good at, you got to prove to us that you can at least be respectable at the thing you're bad at. And that's shooting. That's three-point shooting. Orlando is not convinced Cleveland to not defend the three-point line. The Magic are getting a lot of open three-point shots because Cleveland doesn't believe that Orlando can make them. And when Orlando misses those early threes, they double down on it and say, okay, you're not making any threes again. We're going to completely shut you out of the paint. And like I've said all year long, for this Magic team, it's win the paint, win the game. Orlando's lost the points in the paint battle in each of the 2 games. They've been able to get to the line. They've been able to do a lot of the things they normally do to make up for their bad three-point shooting, but they haven't been able to get to the paint. Like the Cavs did in game 1, like the Cavs did in game 2. Cavs didn't shoot much better from 3 than Orlando. As much as we want to harp on the shooting, Cleveland isn't hitting shots either. Like, Orlando's defense has been good for 3/4 of every game. The first quarter's been terrible, but the Magic's defense has been good enough to win these games, but Cleveland is the one hitting the shots early and staking the lead. Orlando hasn't been able to string together shots and put together a 12-0 run that gives them a 6, 7, 8-point lead. That's what Cleveland's doing. That's all Cleveland's doing. And they're just holding on and staking that lead because these are 2 elite defenses. When these defenses settle in, you aren't scoring on them unless you're taking the shot they want you to take. In game 1, that was Evan Mobley shooting threes. In game 1, that was Evan Mobley shooting threes. In game 2, that was, Mitchell hit a couple threes. They got Garland going a little bit. It was Jared Allen attacking the offensive glass. They're getting switches and getting Allen on the offensive glass. The Magic make some shots, and all of a sudden Cleveland's going to change their defense, and you're going to find that gap to get downhill and get to the basket the way that the Magic need to. So, first quarter is going to matter, like everyone's been saying. First quarter is going to really matter. Evans has a lineup idea. Why don't we play bigger lineup to create mismatches? Suggs, Franz, Paolo, Isaac, Goga. I don't know if that necessarily creates a mismatch. Like I said, Cleveland's defense right now is set up to force three-point shooting. And if rebounding weren't so much of a concern, I might actually go small. I might actually go small and say put Paolo at center Franz, Isaac, get all your shooters out there. Put the defense would be terrible, but put Ingles out there. But I will say this: I think one of the reasons Mo Wagner has been very effective is Mo Wagner is a screen and roller. He screens and he rolls down the lane. He forces the defense to not wall up the ball handler because they got to account for him around the basket. And I think in trying to overthink the shooting a little bit, and this is where I think Mosley's been outcoached and just tactically hasn't been at the level that the Magic need. And look, the Magic haven't executed anyway. Like if the strategy is to get shots, the Magic are getting shots. Then the Magic just need a hard screener and a hard roller. And Mo Wagner is very good at that. Wendell Carter is not so great at that. He'll do it, but it's not his bread and butter. Goga Bitadze is good at that. And I do think that it is worth looking at Goga Bitadze. I don't know in that starting lineup. I'd still start Wendell Carter. I think Wendell just gives you a little bit more versatility. And I think spacing and shooting are the bigger issue in this series. And so I don't think the Goga card is the right one to pull quite yet. But I do think that forcing your way into the paint a little bit more, having if Jared Allen is killing you on the glass, not that Goga Bitadze is your best rebounder, but Goga Bitadze will be physical and will get a body on Jared Allen. And so that I think is something worth considering. I don't know if the Magic will pull the trigger on that in game 3, but it is one of the options I think should be on the table. I don't know if a bigger lineup is the way to go. Maybe it is. I worry about Franz defending Donovan Mitchell. He kind of took a little shot at him in game 2. I wasn't super impressed with it. So it's hard to say. Fresh reminder from our friend here at Pee Wee's Burnt Pizza. Cavs fan here. Series isn't close to being over. Teams can easily tie the series back up. Just win on your home court. As a reminder, the Magic had the 6th best home record in the league, 3rd best home record in the Eastern Conference. They are a very different team at the Kia Center. And like I said, I am expecting a massive energy push. Cleveland got a big energy boost from that crowd on the road at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. It was loud. I'm expecting Magic fans to answer, and that is a big thing. Pee Wee, I like having the Cavs fan perspective, so I'm going to go back to Pee Wee here. Cavs don't want a double Paolo, which they are and they aren't. Him scoring 25, 30 points won't hurt. Can't let the role players have good games, so have to shut them down. That's actually been the Magic strategy too, to be perfectly honest. I think the reason why Gary Harris is guarding Donovan Mitchell is because they recognize Donovan Mitchell is going to get his. He's going to get his shots. He's going to get his points. He's a really good player. He's the best player in this series by far. And so the Magic are, put Jalen Suggs on Darius Garland to slow Darius Garland down. And now it's just about, okay, can they prevent Evan Mobley from getting to the basket? Can they prevent Jared Allen from cleaning up the offensive glass? They've done a great job everywhere else. Both teams have very similar strategies. I will push back a little bit on this. It's not that the Cavs are doubling Paolo, but they're walling him. And they're preventing him from getting to the basket and forcing him to be a passer and forcing him to pass to shooters that are inconsistent. We haven't seen the Cavs have to change their defensive strategy yet because the Magic just haven't been able to make them pay for leaving their shooters open. And that's going to be, again, that's the challenge. We're going to get last questions here. I'm going to run out of time on the X Spaces. So if you're on X and you want to get a speaker request in, now would be the time because I'm going to have to shut down the X Spaces and probably shut down the pod here in a minute. Javier Gandia adding the comment here. Adding an opinion to my earlier question, playoff experience is important. If we believe in AB, win or lose, isn't it necessary to give him a few minutes like suggested prior? Fultz out, AB in. I do think that would be valuable for AB. I think that there is a sense that the Magic are trying to win, which is definitely a different mindset maybe than they've had most of the season. But part of me just feels like they just don't, like, for better or for worse, right or wrong. And again, I agree. AB should be playing Fultz's minutes at this point because at least AB is willing to shoot and gives you some size. If he has to guard Mitchell for a little bit. My sense tells me that they don't trust AB. And that's being a rookie. It's not anything wrong with Anthony Black, but I just don't think they trust Anthony Black. And I think that's what this comes down to. And I think, again, this is where I think Mosley did not manage the season well. I love what Steve Kerr used to do. Steve Kerr used to pull Leandro Barbosa aside, the veteran, and say, hey, I'm going to play this rookie this game. You're going to sit this game, even though you're in our regular rotation, just to get him in a game. The Magic probably should have been doing that with Anthony Black. They probably should have been doing that with Goga Bitadze. They probably should have been doing that with Jet Howard, just to get them in a game and see where they're at. It could be a game like against Charlotte. It could be a game that you can afford to take that gamble and take that risk and make a mistake and still win. But I think, because now you're in the playoffs and you don't know what those guys give you. You don't know what those guys have. And so maybe that's a lesson that a young coach in Jamal Mosley is learning as he prepares for next year's playoff run. At this point, Rich Singh commenting that we should play Jet Howard. Jet Howard's just not an option. Like, he hasn't played in the NBA all season. There's no feel between the coaching staff and him. Right now, he's just something in theory. I wouldn't put him in. I get everyone wants to kind of see him play. His skill set matches something the Magic need. I wouldn't trust him at this point. I wouldn't trust him for sure. If I don't trust AB, I definitely don't trust Jet Howard. And right now, the Magic need to win, obviously. And again, Thursday's a must-win game. Like, at the end of the day, when we kind of take the microscope back on this series, the Magic have to win a game in Cleveland. Like, that's the only requirement of this series. If the Magic take care of business Thursday and Saturday, they're going back to Cleveland 2-2, and we're back at this all over again. The only requirement of this series was Orlando had to win a game in Cleveland. And I would argue that game one was probably the game they needed to win. Like, game one was set up for them to win. And they've played well enough. They played well enough defensively to win both those games. They got to find some shooting. They got to find some offense. And once they find that, once they get that rhythm back, then we're going to have a series. And so we'll see. Again, we'll see Thursday. We'll hear from the Magic tomorrow after practice, and we'll see Thursday. We'll see what ends up happening. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Appreciate everyone who joined the show live on YouTube as well as X Spaces. I'm going to try and do these a little bit more periodically. I want to get more interaction with you guys live. Helps me out too to get this thing done earlier. So always want to interact with you, the listeners. Always want to be available for you guys. So always looking for suggestions. So definitely thank you all for checking out the show, checking it out live, or checking out on replay, as the case may be. You can, of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipR_OMD. Subscribe to Locked On Magic on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all film-based and podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can follow us there on Twitter at OMagicDaily. You can check us out on YouTube as well. Search for us at Locked On Magic. And as always, be sure to check out my Patreon page, your Orlando Magic Hub, for even more Orlando Magic content. You can find that at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. And as always, thank you for your support. Now that you're done listening to us, be sure to check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube and now available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening and or watching today's episode of Locked On Magic, and thank you again for joining us live. For those who did, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.